Hello, can you hear me? Yes, right, please, hands up, can you? No? So first of all, thank you all for being here. Thank you, Nzive, for your kind invitation to be at this conference. It is the first time around my first time around in Leon, my first time at CyberCamp, and I'm happy. Let's focus on the topic for today. I know the name of my presentation is quite general in scope, but before I move on, I would like to ask you a question to start interaction with you. Hands up. Hands up. Who thinks at some point your company has been hacked? I guess 40% hands up. For cybersecurity, especially about offensive side, that's what I'm focusing on. We have this leitmotif. There are two kinds of companies or governments in the world. Those have been hacked or those who have not yet found out. So those who didn't raise your hand, 60%, maybe you haven't heard it has happened. So there's recently been a change in the governments, in the companies, to try and understand this concept where we've all been hacked one way or another. One of the main problems we encounter is that we are asking wrong questions. Often when we get hacked, we say, we've been hacked, but to what extent? This is a very difficult question because the answer is everything. We need to understand that if we've been hacked, we've been fully hacked. The best way to reveal a hack server is to rebuild it. This idea that antivirus companies saying that there was a virus coming in, I used the antivirus and it cleans it out, this is just a matter of the past. Maybe a virus because it's a program with a specific function, but as these viruses start communicating with the internet to get commands, and we still don't know what those commands are. We don't know what's going on in our system. We can have forensic analysis, yes, but as I see it, it's far from science, and it's not fully accurate. So, first idea, take-home message. If we get hacked, we need to rebuild. There's no way to know to what extent we've been hacked. This is me, Nico Waisman. I've been introduced. This is one of my hobbies, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. This is my second passion to cybersecurity, and it is closely related to cybersecurity, by the way. The fact that this is an art where the technique surpasses strength, and this is meaningful for hacking. Through technique, one single hacker can break into a multi-billion worth company and ruin it. And this is part of what we are going to discuss here. But before that, I bring this concept. This is a Latin sentence meaning war from everyone to everyone. This is by Hobbes, that he wrote the Leviathan, where he discusses that before we had the civil society, there was the natural state, as it is called, where there were individuals, each of whom they could do anything, cause anything on another individual, insofar as this allows them to preserve their rights. So it's a war of everyone against everyone. Everyone turning on everyone. And this is what's happening on the internet right now. It's about having a Windows XP and up on the internet. Within 2 minutes it'll be hacked. But it's not just a worm or as simple as that. A worm would be one of the basic things we need to be protected against. It's not a problem anymore. If we've been hacked with a worm, we have much more a conceptual problem than a security problem. But then, this worm fully connected to the internet keeps attacking us. But the worm, again, it's the simplest side of security. Then there are states, governments, that have much more complicated operations going on the internet, from which you cannot be protected virtually. And the problem is there's no legal framework, and probably there'll never be one on the internet. So it is very difficult to protect ourselves from attacks. It may seem that the state should come and protect me from computer attacks. But what if what happens elsewhere, coming from Thailand? There's no way for the state to come and help me. Maybe internally that would be possible. Within Spain, this is also punished, but it happens in other countries. And there is a much more complicated legal framework, and it takes so much effort that over a simple attack, it makes no sense. But it is funny though. Everyone against everyone, right? But if you come and see and think conceptually, the internet was built in the US with the idea of protecting themselves against nuclear attacks. So that's the source of the internet. Let's build up a network, so in case of a nuclear attack, we preserve our communications. And yet, when it moved to the private sector and we have individual users, it's become a network that it's vulnerable to toasters connected to the internet. You see, they print the weather on your toast every morning. And this is quite a problem. So everything is connected to the internet. And this is cultural, actually. All devices get locked onto the internet. So this is a beautiful kitchen. And I set up things, and conceptually or metaphorically would be the same as getting a pool of hooligans all the way into the kitchen. And why is that? Because these are devices that are easily hacked. Have you heard Bondenmirai? Have you heard about that? Medium, a botnet. A botnet, you don't know where it is coming from, and it attacks you. And that's the simplest part of security. That would be username and password. So devices all over the internet, and you see the admin, that's the password, that's the user word. It's been for 30 years, so let's build up a botnet network and make profit out of it. And that's what's going on with us now. Somehow we are letting hooligans into kitchen, our home, letting them into our home. But let me talk to you about 2016. When it comes to interstate security, 2012 brought us StackNet. Do you know it? Later on, I will refer to it. That way we understand that anything in the world, whether it is connected or not to the internet, can be hacked. And then the concept changed again. And that is cyber weapons, cyber war. It's not just through running items. It goes, or is based on attacking on the information. Let me dwell on that. But in order to conceptualize it further, cybersecurity is not just floating items or things that are hacked, but it is based on information. And why is that? If you attack on information, you attack on society itself. So a group of ideas, a culture. So different countries understood that if there is a need to attack, that's what needs to be attacked on. And this is, I guess, the message for 2016. Let's discuss cyber war. We know it's been gone for several years, and military speaking, they started to understand that the internet is a new dominion. So there were 4 originally: land, air, water, and space. And some 10 years ago, Michael Hayden, former director of NSA and CIA, explained that the internet from now onwards would be the fifth dominion. Each has its own specificity. It's not the same to have a war that it's fought on air or on land. So there are different features and different elements. So the internet becomes a dominion, a space where war can happen. And it means a lot. There are many implications we still don't know and understand. I don't think the military themselves understand what it is that the internet is a new dominion. But as it is a dominion, it is exchangeable. So if something were to happen on the internet, it can be fought back from a different dominion, same as regular war. I fight it on land and I can send a bomb from air. So it will be a war on the internet, but the response can come from somewhere else. So the question is, what's an act of war on the internet? And here we see a thinker saying, a philosopher, is an action that is carried out between states to penetrate computers or networks in a different state in order to cause, for the purposes of causing damage or disruption. To what extent damage is an act of war? Hacking a server for the NSA or NASA, is it an act of war? Did he blow something up? Or publishing someone's emails on the internet? So an act of war has this original definition as a doctrine in every country, so it can be adapted. But there's no general consensus for the cyber side of it. There are different laws on armed conflict in every country. Actually, there's one, but there's not been specified for the cybercrime. It's not been criminalized so far. So now it's a war, everyone against everyone, and no one feels like recognizing it or criminalizing it specifically. And so many things go on, and they can spy and have underlying attacks without a proper response, at least so far. And there is this idea of cost benefit. There is kind of a Cold War on the internet where they all spy on each other or even have violent actions on the internet, and no one says a word, since to some extent they are all carrying out their own operations. So you come to think, what's my country doing? And then that's when the dilemma would be, is it okay to have cyber weapons and use them? But let's see the features of this cyber war. One of which is that it is supposed that arms are kinetic, meaning that have a physical effect. Something will end up blowing up. What first example comes from 1892. Russia bought gas pipelines through Europe or Siberia, I'm not sure. And the software has been tampered with by a different country. And at some point, those the gas lines, pipelines, blew up in 1992. Which was quite a financial problem because they had to rebuild those pipelines. And they had to check every pipe and every software because once again could have been modified and blow up again. So this was a first kinetic attack that was based on virtuality or programming. We will see next another larger example. But I guess this is the first example in history. And as I said, not everything is about blowing things up. When we think of kinetic, we think of these explosions, but there are others. I will not refer to, but I guess this would be the one. Someone sitting, typing into their computer. But kinetic is more like this. Spine coming in, getting information, and taking said information somewhere where you can make profit out of it. And you can expose it or not, but you make profit out of it. That's what's kinetic about cyber war. Then attribution is also large, significant on the internet. Attribution, it means who attacked me. And it is very difficult on the internet, especially in real life. You might remember better than me the Atocha bomb attack here in Spain, who was attributed to at first and who was actually the perpetrator. And this is often the case on the internet because they come from different IP addresses. So coming from China, that means that it was China that attacked us, or Russia, they were the ones attacking us. And things are not so straightforward. It's also very interconnected. As a matter of fact, it is done on purpose. It is a false flag attack, as it is known, where I specifically attack you from China so that you think it was China's people. And I push conflict up into China and your country. But this is the same way as with a bomb. It is very complicated. Once a bomb went off and you try to rearm it, you see here it said made in Russia. So how do we really know whether it was made in Russia? So generally, what's done here is further analysis, trying to understand context and exchange ideas. So I'll use our dominions. So I will use intelligence not just on the internet, but try and understand who is behind the attack. Sometimes it's very obvious. It happens at specific times, windows of opportunity that we know existed. If you really know a bit of international politics. But problem is when it goes down to law enforcement level, when comes police officer and says, my company has been hacked, so this was the IP address. But for cops, for police forces, we need to have 100% veracity. There will be prosecution and trial, so 100% certainty, and that's why other things are done. Search warrant, and they seize their computer. And so 100% attribution that on the internet it's almost impossible. Then another interesting topic by which these attacks become even more interesting on the internet. Asymmetry. Most books and manuals on the topic say that cyber war is asymmetric, which means no matter how big our weaponry, we have a small country with 25 hackers and still they can attack my networks, gain access to my networks, and take down one of my servers. And this is true. Why do we think so? Because the amount is low. So keeping up 25 experts is not expensive. And when compared to traditional warfare, the price of a drone would be $32 million. That would be the cheapest airplane. And missiles, 100,000 per missile. So an attack would be very cheap, a cyber attack compared to others. Have you had a pen test Have you been pen tested? They will charge you $30,000, $40,000, and in given time, they will end up hacking into your servers. There's another leitmotif in computer security means that everything can be hacked as long as you have time and money to pay for it. So you've got plenty of money, you can buy the necessary people or the necessary bugs to break into a network. What about exploits? That's where most of the focus is on cyber war. Not so very expensive either. Google for Chrome now pays a bug bounty that is $5,000 per Chrome bug. It is to laugh at when you think that Chrome is one of the most used items at a world level. For iPhone, it's a bit more expensive. I guess there's some private companies offering $500,000 for a bug so that you can shell break into an iPhone. It's good. $500,000. I use the underground and everything else, so it's lots of money, right? But at government level, it's not much money. This is our cyber war tank. So this is a cheap way out. So we want to attack on an iPhone and maybe $500,000. It might seem that we could have it attacked. No problem for a specific target, right? But I guess the main problem with asymmetric war, well, this is in English because this play on words is nice. You can have access to a server, this is cheap, but then being in every server at the same time is not the same. And handling that information, and that's what's going on. It's not just one attack by one power, it's powers attacking everywhere, and that brings us to Stuxnet. If you haven't heard about it, let me explain. The idea here was to prove we can be anywhere, not us, but whoever did it, that said that it was the US and Israel together, but we can be anywhere, no matter whether they're connected or not. When I think of a Stuxnet, I remember first Mission Impossible, where Tom Cruise, well, there is a computer that it's offline, and you know, Tom Cruise didn't have the money. Otherwise, if he had the money on Mission Impossible 1, he would have gone with the Stuxnet. We need to curb uranium enrichment in Iran. We have two options: throwing a missile on those plants, or coming up with something far more intelligent and more expensive, of course. So there was this worm built aiming at a few computers. And why is that? Uranium enrichment plants, naturally, are not connected to the internet. PLCs are connected to some computers that are offline, of course. Why would we have them online? We all feel that we need to have everything online because we feel the need to know what's going on all the time. But here, they were not online, so they had to reach them out. So first infected a few computers, some people's computers who potentially they knew would have access to this uranium enrichment plant. The worm stayed there, sniffing, and when they plugged in a pen drive, it would get infected. Eventually, the owner, as we all do, if we are offline, we get the pen drive. We use it as a network, and the pen drive was infected, and someone at some point made the mistake of plugging it to the computer that was handling the plant's machines, and the machines got infected. And so they did something very intelligent. we should not break it all down, because if we take them all down, it would be much more kinetic, right? So they drifted or increased the machine rotation slightly. And as you can see, it was just starting out. This was more trial and error processes. And the change in rotational speed for uranium cleaning or brushing meant that, well, Iranians stayed like that, saying there's something going wrong. But it's our problem. Something wrong with the hardware, our research is wrong. So Stuxnet was a kinetic attack, but it was more kind of an idea, concept, researchers. Not aiming so much at machines themselves. The idea was to curve the program, aiming at ideas, researchers. People, usually, when they hear about Stuxnet, that's what they focus on. 0 day. There were 4 of them for Stuxnet, 5 years back or so. They weren't expensive, $500,000, $600,000. Or if you just train the necessary people and had them working for a couple of years, you could get these vulnerabilities that were not very complex, some of which were found elsewhere beyond Stuxnet. Actually, when they were already in Stuxnet, where they were found elsewhere. But we think of 0 days, and we see that what was expensive about Stuxnet was everything beyond exploit. For driver signature on Windows, they had to steal 2 certificates for which they had to run a full complex operation. We don't know anything about that. There is no information. They realized they've been hacked when they got information on Stuxnet and found out what was going on. So 2 operations that were very complicated. They had to get control of PLCs, and they were Siemens. And for PLC configuration, they don't go over to Germany and say, give me 6 PLCs. Who are you? Well, yes, I'm the intelligence agency at this country. No, you need to be a given entity. And having an internet identity for a real company is not easy at all. It's not just about buying an identity, and maybe they will ask while they are trying to do so in Belarus, Russia. And we have Canvas. And we have so many export restrictions because there are many exploits. So we need to verify where each country, which country they come from, each of them. So clearly, it's people who realize this is not a company. And sometimes we get shell companies that have a website or whatever, and these are terrible. So this is already a out of the shelf product. So these people had to build an identity that had to be trustworthy to some extent, and by not just a product, but many products. And why is that? Because when you throw a sophisticated attack like this, it cannot fail, ever. Failing means that you're wasting millions down the drain. And it's not just the model, but you need to try out 500 different models, and for each model you need to make sure that there is no problem coming up at all, because you never know if at a given point, any time at the plant, changing one PLC for a different brand, it might mean that the network crashes down, and engineers might wonder why it crashed down. And they start to look into it, and it all falls apart. So 4th element would be keeping access. So how can we manage trying to communicate with my tool? How can I make sure that I can find the status of the tool? How it's doing, progress it's made. I guess the difference in symmetry would be this. targeting, finding out who we need to attack specifically, not everyone, but attack those that need to be attacked. NSA or those people we knew that had access. And there are many things. It's not just cyber. It is human intelligence as well, software maintenance, and then all that information that we get not just from Stuxnet, but other attacks. We need to preserve information and we need to understand it. And sometimes it's very large information, especially when we have man in the middle or we are breaking into other networks. It's lots of information which takes lots of analysis. And what's expensive about it is having the right people to run the analysis. So if we say analysis, what about WikiLeaks?
WikiLeaks. I personally, to me, well, I think it is a cyber weapon, which is widely distributed. It is very difficult to hack it, to attack it, or to close it down. Apparently, there was a judge in California who wanted to forbid or to close down that domain, and because it was open, it got replicated everywhere really fast. So it was just impossible to shut it down. So they tried to do everything to shut it down, but you will find lots of mirrors through proxies, through everything you can think of. So it is just impossible to stop. And if you can stop it, you will get very many clones. So there are very many clones out there. And it has an impact, not only a local impact, but also a global impact. And what it is important about WikiLeaks is that ideas are being broken into. This is part of the manifesto of Assange. And he had the idea that every government or tyranny is based on conspiration, on conspiracy, on secrets. And they decided to attack that conspiracy, those secrets. And what is most important about WikiLeaks is not that it is just a repository of stolen documents, but also what makes it all the most important is the wiki side of it. The wiki side of it allows us to analyze that information. That information was taken, was rightly indexed, therefore it puts it in the public domain. Therefore, it opened the doors to general population and also went primarily to journalists. So every new leak could be accessed by journalists as well as the public in general, and that allowed people to become aware of that information. So there have been very many leaks that have been pasted later on and disseminated everywhere. And these WikiLeaks opened the doors for everyone. And then we may wonder, where do these leaks come from? And this cartoon kind of explains it. I found these car keys, also this old VC remote and pocket change, and then 12,000 new Hillary Clinton emails. It seems that they come out of anywhere. We understand that perhaps it is kind of a magic repository that is put there by the good citizens, but no, that's not the case. And actually, the war or the battle in cyberspace this year was won by Russia. Big hacking activities this year had the Russians behind. This was like the perfect storm. They had all the possible and necessary conditions to make these hackings. So hacking does not take place in 2 or 3 days, not at all. These operations are not carried out in a couple of days. They take years, and then they wait until they find the right time to attack, and then they stay there for a long time. So this is the first thing that we have to be very clear about. They had access to that information a long time ago. So yes, I may have a log there. Can I trust that log? If you have compromised my machine, I wouldn't trust it. But these three significant hacking operations, the NCC, which is the National Democrats Council in the US, and then the private emails of Hillary Clinton and also of the director of the campaign, all those mails were hacked and leaked at the right time. And this is compromise. This is a Russian concept standing for compromised material. And this has been used by Russia as well as by very many other countries for a long time now. In 2009, a British diplomat was in Russia, and out of the sudden, well, there was a video of him with some prostitutes, and that was leaked. And the same went for another diplomat. There was a video of him making declarations against the U.S. This person was very much involved in the Ukrainian conflict, and then he had to resign. He was from his job. So they did exactly the same thing this time. 3 days before the meeting of the Democrats, the DNC mails were leaked. Lots of information there, lots of information. So the Democrat committee with the NC apparently is to be impartial. They could see that they were siding with Clinton and not with Sanders. And the same. Also, few days before elections, Hillary Clinton's emails were hacked. This was classified information, and she was very close to go to court or to be taken to court for handling private or confidential information through your private email. That is a big legal issue in the US. That was really timely. And of course, it had repercussions. It would be nonsense to say that Russia has been responsible for the election results. There were very many other conditions out there as well. And from Argentina, we've seen that very many crazy conditions around it as well. And, well, what it is important to understand is that the agenda of the topics that is being discussed does not only go through the media, but also goes through the social networks. So, therefore, they knew that they had to implement an attack there. And not only to raise people's awareness, but just to give them a topic for conversation. So if we are saying that Clinton will be prosecuted, that's what people are starting to discuss, whether she could be eligible for prosecution or not. And then we started to see interesting things, for instance, a recipe to cook risotto, and also apparently leaking donuts in public space. It is an offense to not do it at airports. And apparently there is a mail that says that Ariana Grande was in the video leaking these donuts. And just because of that, she was not allowed to sing in a presidential gala dinner. Well, another interesting thing that came out as from the WikiLeaks, from the leaks, is that Hillary Clinton doesn't know how to handle a fax machine. Apparently, she didn't know what to do. There was, well, a few mails discussing that incident. Okay. So, well, from what we read, it would seem that fax is as old as this one. And then, well, and other interesting emails. There came a time that DNC wrote that the cybersecurity of the Democrat Party is very poor. And then there are a number of men saying, no, you are not right. And then 1 week later, they were hacked. And it made me very happy to see that politicians are ordinary people like we are, and they also receive spam, free travel to Jamaica, photographs of nudes, etc. And of course, these Viagra offers that we all get. So this makes politicians more humane. And then the director came out and said the following. Says, of course, this was carried out by the Russians. This is a nation-to-nation attack, and therefore we will have to respond. How are they going to respond? We just don't know. Perhaps that will be an internet response or not. In any case, if they respond, they will not respond tomorrow. Remember this. Internet attacks take a long time before they are implemented. And if they were to do it tomorrow, on on top of that, it will also be too obvious. And then the internet started to make Russia accountable for it. And then also very important, and now focusing on specific topics, we can say that yes, if a presidential candidate can be hacked, we can also be hacked. However, the problem becomes more and more important when we go deeper into it. So the chain of supply. Other than having a secure network, every time we are using or introducing a new device, we are adding uh, software from a third party, and third party software and devices are not always secure. Well, whenever we buy a device, we are buying a black box full of secrets that we are not aware of, and especially if this product comes from a third party country. So for some reason, Huawei routers in the US are forbidden. They are not used by the military or by other agencies. Surely there is a reason for it. And well, throughout history, we've seen several cases, several examples. I will focus on this one. So at the time of the Cold War, it was discovered that in one of the US embassies there were some electronic typewriters, and someone said that any device in that embassy building was just tampered with, and that would also was open to tapping. And then they had to check all the machines, all the equipment that they had there. So they had to do all sorts of things so that the Russians could not see that they had detected that they had that information. And then they had to dismantle the machine, to take photographs of it, to scan it through with X-ray, and then to discover what was happening. Then in the end, they found that the typewriter had a small coil next to the power interrupter, power switch, magnometer, I think that's the name of it. And then the keyboard strokes or the letters strokes was distorted magnetically, and that information was sent out to a Russian facility. Transmission was radio transmission, and they could see, they could compose the message. And then when that was discovered, they started to create a methodology to understand each and every one of the devices that were located in sensitive areas. And this is about understanding the supply chain. And understanding the supply chains one of the ideas was just to control this supply chains was that the goods that were transferred from the US to Russia would not stop anywhere in between, in the middle. And then these e-ballots, very important to mention here. In Argentina, when we had national or presidential elections, we started to use these e-ballots. So these ballots had RFDI chip. And we say, no, no, thank you, because I can read it remotely. But other than that, these e-ballots was manufactured and supplied by a private company. The private company did not allow to, did not disclose the software. They used a hardware that we never knew about. But for some reason, there was a good Samaritan, and I would like to thank him for that, uploaded part of the code on the internet. It was written in Python. And they uploaded on the internet, and me and a group of friends we started to analyze it. And then one of the people in the group, Alfredo Ortega, discovered something very interesting. These chips, well, you cast your e-ballots on that machine, then you choose, you select your candidate, then you just folded the paper into and then put it in the ballot case. And then there was someone at the other end counting the votes. The thing is that the machine didn't do a good parsing. So you could change the chip, okay, from your mobile phone, and therefore you could vote the same candidate several times. So if you went into a booth and you used the same string to vote the same candidates, as long as you had that string, you could cast several votes to that candidate, to a given candidate. We want politicians, companies, and the media, and no one ever listened to us, and that's the way elections proceeded. And what happened this year? National level, well, a group of people, including myself, went to the parliament, and we took this question over there, and they forbid it. The e-ballot was withdrawn, was not used for the national election that we had this year. First, so what it is most recommendable is to go back to pen and paper, whether we know more sophisticated means or not. Okay, let me share this with you. This is beautiful. This can only be happen in Twitter. So let us add an IDS. And this happens in Twitter. It also happens in companies. I know how to fix my security, or to bring security to my company. Kind of an IDS, kind of looking like this or like that. And this is the problem. This is the problem. We won't fix everything with external products, with firewalls, with IDSs. But the issue, the concept of perimeter security is dead. So the internet will, even if not attacked, it will people will have access to it. Raise your hand, those of you who have heard about an antivirus stopping a 0-day. That has never happened, isn't it? An IDS stopping a 0-day didn't happen again either. And then, well, then investigators found a vulnerability and understood why it failed. Yes, that may happen, but IDSs or AVs do not stop 0 days real time as they happen. So therefore, we have to stop trusting that and to put all our hopes on external products, because perimeter security is dead. Danger is in our network. We have to be very clear about that. What do you do to defend yourself? Well, to defend yourself, the first thing you have to do is to understand it, because who controls the network? The owner of the network, whether it is us or our IT team. If the attacker is the owner or the controller of the network, we are in deep trouble. So therefore, we have to, well, we know that we have defensive security, but we really need to understand offensive security. Well, defensive security, sometimes it is arranged in silos. It is, well, we have small networks, so that is our understanding of them. We want to simplify them as much as possible. Simplification of things is always good, but however, we should not forget about the big picture. If we understand the entirety of our network, we will be fully understand it, because the devil is always in the details, and because our attackers are aware of all the possible complexities. So, well, if they come and attack us with admin, of course, I cannot do anything at all. And also very important that very much benefited the world of security, such as Linux and Microsoft did. Instead of fixing all the security issues, which is just impossible, you just cannot catch up. We are all humans. We all make errors. So they decided to produce the most expensive exploit. And how did they do that? How do you do the most expensive one? Well, you do that by complicating more and more the exploiting media. Then ALSR and BRP started and came in, making it all the more complicated, all the more difficult for new entrants that want to exploit something. And then for us, we should start thinking how what do you want to do in your network to make it more expensive for attackers. So we should stop thinking about exploits. IDSs, we know that do not work. Therefore, let's do what I said before. What is most expensive for an attacker? Staying or spending time in my network or what? That's what we want to test. We have to look into persistence. Is there anything persistent in my machine that is communicating in an asynchronous manner? Connect back. I exploit something and there is a connection that comes back to me. That doesn't exist anymore. That is obsolete. Filtration. If it is in my network, that's for something. Exfiltration. Information will come out of my network. Can we detect how information is being exfiltrated? Many companies are already thinking about that. We work for financial companies and we have a specific service for that. We refer to it as adversary simulation. I'm saying that this is our service, but you can do it yourselves in your network. You have to start thinking about that and using some tools. There are some off-the-shelf tools for that, and there are also free tools out there. So the idea is not even only to pen test the network. You give me 3 different solutions, and then I introduce an implant. Then that implant would allow me to do lateral movement or sideways movement. So we do a coordinated exercise. So we, as well as the person in charge of it, and we start doing it by in a very, very silent manner. We take out manner in a very, very silent manner. We use DNS, ICMP. You take a look at DUBU and other governmental issues. You know that they use atypical protocols because a TCP connection is no longer useful. Or for instance, sometimes I can send you out a file with an image. Stega image. So I want the image that will help me exfiltrate information or to communicate with my attacker. So we have to start doing that. Can I detect that PDF file with that Stega image? So I really have to find out whether the response machine or equipment realizes what is happening or not. So and then we start to make more and more noise and to move more and more. And then we see to what extent we are detected or not, if any. And this is a great exercise. If we take that as a basis, then we have to say, how can we stop that? Of course, not with an IDS. IDS is not good at all. And this is the point. This is the point that I want to make. You have to attack or point what it hurts the most. We have to start working and collaborating as a community. And what it is essential is that you handle your own information so that you don't give your information to an external product to do it for you. Of course, we are not going to be able to replace all the signatures of IDS, but let us have our own device that would allow us to gather information, to analyze it. If we can create our own tools, security factors should go through the human aspect. We really need to have people ready and able to detect attacks. And this is basically the end of my presentation. And well, if you have any questions, I will be happy to take them. Well, I've gone over time, I think. I think I've gone over time, right? If there are no questions, thank you very much for your attention. I will be around. If you have any questions or comments, please do not hesitate to approach me.